So Minister Chagger, on the 27th, we celebrate Multiculturalism Day. This year, the Multiculturalism Act turns 50. So is it aging well?
I'll tell you, we have accomplished a lot in 50 years. And the Multiculturalism Act, as we know, is 50 years old, but we only really started celebrating in Canada in 2003. And I think, it's really to the forefront that we know that in Canada, diversity is our strength. But we also know that it's a work in progress and it requires our attention and our care and our effort. And we're really seeing that across the country. And I think the pandemic has really exposed the inequities that exist within our society. And it's also allowed more Canadians to reflect on the kind of Canada we want.
When we look at this policy over the past 50 years, how would you say it has evolved?
I would say that it's evolved in, I think we're showcasing a lot more of our diversity. I also do believe that the world is getting to know Canada better. And, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was the first Prime Minister on the international stage to talk about our history with Indigenous peoples in Canada and the importance of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and its reports. But I don't think many people knew that prior. On the outside stage, I think people see Canada as a beacon of diversity, which we are, but we also know that there is systemic racism that exists. So, and just here in London, Ontario, an hour away from my home in Waterloo, we saw 4 people killed for going for a walk because of their religion. So I do believe that it's evolved and we've done well. I think we're becoming smarter as a society, but we can also see that there is hate and ignorance that are present. And if they do not belong in our society, which I don't believe they belong in our society, it will take every single one of us to ensure that we rid our society of some of the horrible stuff that's been taking place.
Yeah, and of course there is that cohort of people who, will not always accept that phrase of diversity as our strength. So do you believe that, these people can be reached or that we can really kind of achieve that?
I think, that's okay for people to have a differing of opinions. When Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talks about diversity as our strength in Canada, he's not only talking about the shells we occupy, we're talking about diversity of regions, of languages, of perspectives, of experiences. I think what's important is that we should not be intentionally trying to stop someone from succeeding within our country. And I think that's the discrepancy. I think, people can have the opinions they want. Everyone comes from different places, but we should not be imposing our values onto someone else, or we should not be trying to harm someone else. What kind of society is that? I've always been taught to treat others the way I want to be treated. I've always been taught that it's important that we lift each other up. And I think that's where a lot of the work I've been doing within this ministry and as an elected official and a minister of the Crown is not just, is leading the ladder down, bringing more people along with us, because, it's great for me to be an Indo-Canadian woman at the cabinet table. And it's really exciting now to see Minister Anand has joined me, but I want to see a lot more of that. And, it's great to be the first woman to be the government House leader, but I want to see a second. And I want to see a third, and we want to see more. And I think that's where really is how do we continue to ensure that society evolves and shapes for the better, and that we're more consciously inclusive.
Mm-hmm. And one of the criticisms of multiculturalism has been just that it promotes this hyphenated Canada, or that status or identity, and it hinders integration. So what would your perspective be on that?
I actually think I believe that in Canada, diversity is our strength. And so for me, my parents immigrated from India in the early 70s. My grandfather came here first, and then my dad, and so forth. And I'm born and raised in the Waterloo region, and my first language is Punjabi, my second is English, and my third is French. And so I actually believe part of being Canadian is to actually keep your identity. And I think that's where our relationship with Indigenous peoples is, for me, very difficult, because we try to take their culture and language away. And if I did not have my culture and language, I would not be who I am. And so that's where whenever I am talking to different communities, I always say, make sure you speak your language around your children, because as global citizens, it actually benefits us. So I always, listen to the words like integration and assimilation. And I think that almost puts the onus on families who have immigrated here. In Canada, unless you're Indigenous, everyone has immigrated here. Some have just been here a lot longer than others. And I think all of us have a responsibility to ensure that we have healthier communities, more inclusive communities. And that does not mean the onus is on one over the other. And so I think as much as we want people who come to Canada to succeed, we should also want to broaden our horizons and want to learn more about their cultures and identities, because I think what we've seen with the pandemic is that the world's quite small, and we are all connected. And I think that's where it's important that we really fight as one human race.
Mm-hmm. And really just last words on this, as we look to Multiculturalism Day, we even look to Canada Day coming up soon. There's, of course, a somber tone to this. Many kind of being wary to even celebrate, looking at everything that's all the Indigenous remains that are being found. So I guess really just looking at all of that, what are your final thoughts?
I would say that I hope people are looking. It's really, it's been devastating what Indigenous communities have had to endure. And then just having to go through this again. So I do think it's important that we create space for these communities. Something that our government's committed to doing that no government before us has done is we believe in Indigenous-led and finding a path to not only the truth, but to reconciliation. And we will not perpetuate the same inequalities that have always existed. So I would say this Canada Day is about reflection. I do think as a country, it's given a lot of us a lot, but I think we also recognize that we have more to do. So I think, something that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that has resonated with me is that this Canada Day, we're not necessarily celebrating Canada because it's the best country in the world, but we know that it can be. And every single one of us can help make Canada even better and even more inclusive. And I think that's where every single one of us has a role to play. And I think as horrid as the pandemic has been, it has caused people to have to pause and to have to understand the lived realities and experiences of other individuals. So most people would not have seen the murder of George Floyd, but because we were working from home, because the TV is on, many more people have had to confront that. The video footage in the hospitals of how people have been treated, most people would not have had to see that, but they have had to. And now that we know it exists, what are we going to do about it? I can assure you the federal government has a role to play and we take it very seriously, but it will take every single person in this country, because if we can come together and beat a pandemic, I think we can come together and build an even more inclusive Canada.
Perfect, thank you. And while I have you here, I just have to ask, the conversion therapy bill, tell me, it's gone through.
The conversion therapy legislation has passed the House of Commons. I'm very hopeful that the Senate will be able to get it through so that it can become law. We need to ban conversion therapy in Canada. We have introduced this legislation now for the second time. There was some tactics that were played in the House of Commons, but we were able to get it to a vote. So I really do hope that the Senate's able to do their important work. We also had the United Nations Declaration for the Indigenous Peoples passed in the Senate. And it was actually some senators who didn't necessarily agree with the legislation, conservative senators who abstained. So I would say, similar to our earlier conversation, if you're not helping, perhaps you just need to get out of the way and let the people who are trying to get this work done, let us do the work, because it's important that it gets done.